Every day from then on, Miss Harris kept bragging about her fiancé. He was highly educated and well off, coming from a reputed family that lived in a luxury residential area in the city.
I'll invite you, Miss Thompson, to my wedding as your last chance to see something splendid.
I had no intention of attending such an event. I didn't care about seeing her in her wedding dress, and I was sure I'd be seated with the other female employees. No matter how glamorous the venue or how delicious the food might be, I didn't want to go. As I was thinking that, Miss Harris said,
"Oh, right. I'll show you a picture of his house,"
and started operating her smartphone.
"Ah, found it. This is it."
Saying that, Miss Harris brought her smartphone screen closer to me. There was a house I recognized.
"It's amazing, isn't it? The luxurious and wonderful house is his family home. They must be incredibly wealthy."
Miss Harris was saying, but my eyes did not leave the screen of her smartphone.
"Oh my, are you surprised? If you want, I can show you pictures inside the house as well."
When she slid the photo, a sight I was even more familiar with appeared.
It's a luxurious house that you, Miss Thompson, probably couldn't even dream of entering. Are you envious?"
Cutting off what she was saying, I hurriedly spoke. This is actually my family home. My name is Kimberly Thompson, an employee at a small to medium-sized company. I am already 34 years old, but still single. I've been working at the company, where I got a job right after graduating college, for over 12 years now. Being the oldest among the female employees, I'm in a position often referred to as the old maid. And all the other women who joined the company at the same time as me have left after getting married. In other words, I'm the only one who kept working there. It is not that I'm working there to find a husband. I just diligently work every day. I tend to keep to myself and like being alone, and I'm not very good at socializing. So, from the perspective of those around me, I'm undoubtedly a stick in the mud. But I'm serious about my work, and because I've been at the company for a long time, it seems like the other employees treat me carefully with some respect. Well, I can understand their feelings. I don't go to any social events with my coworkers, and I don't exchange contact information with anyone. I don't hang out in my private life, and I only engage in conversation when absolutely necessary. So it's no wonder they find me boring and don't bother inviting me. But because I've been at the company for a long time and I'm good at my job, they can't complain. I'm quite a senior. I think that's the kind of awkwardness I bring. As for me, I actually find it convenient not being approached by others. I can work in peace, and I can spend my breaks freely. Plus, this job doesn't involve any entertaining or client-facing tasks. So I'm not caught up in any troublesome human relations drama. And I can spend my days off watching as much of my favorite anime as I want. I also like reading, so going to the bookstore and impulse buying books based on their covers is enjoyable. At first glance, some people might feel that my life is lonesome and empty, but I thought this quiet yet peaceful life made me feel happy. However, everything started to change when a young woman joined the company. She was the complete opposite of me, a friendly, cheerful woman with excellent communication skills. Her name is Michelle Harris. Miss Harris was the type to actively approach others, and she seemed particularly popular among the male employees. She was cute and charming, so I figured she easily captured the hearts of the men. When I watched her, I felt like I was watching a character from a movie because she was so different from me. A bright, honest woman at the center of the group. Probably the type of woman I would have a hard time dealing with. While thinking such things, I happened to overhear a group of female employees chatting away cheerfully in the restroom. This all happened when they came into the restroom while I was in there, fixing their makeup and freely starting to gossip and complain. "You know that new girl, Harris? Don't you just find her annoying?" "I know, right? She seems just like she's trying to please men, doesn't she? definitely gives off that vibe. That has to be on purpose, right? She's constantly trying to appear cute. It's so annoying. Her only appeal is that she's young, isn't it? She can't even do her job properly. Isn't it embarrassing to just chase men all the time? Such harsh words. It's only natural that a new employee can't do their job as well. Moreover, I thought to myself that maybe Harris has to rely on the male employees because you guys aren't properly teaching her how to do her job. I have a habit of occasionally observing Harris, who is so different from me in appearance and personality. I have seen her being coldly dismissed by the female employees several times. Every time, Harris looked downhearted and ended up talking to a male colleague. So I don't think she's trying to win over the men. She's just cornered into such situations. I'm sure these female employees gossip about me too, just with different content. If Harris is spoken about like this, I'm sure I get it worse. I'm probably just not seeing it because I'm the oldest among the female employees and can do my job well. Interpersonal relationships can be so exhausting. I'm glad I don't have to get involved. Thinking that, I sat on the toilet until they finished fixing their makeup and left. Then, on another day, Harris was unusually mingling and talking with the female employees. I was surprised but glad to see her fitting in with the other women and decided to take my lunch break. As I got up from my seat to go outside with my packed lunch, as usual, I passed by them, and Harris suddenly called out to me. When I turned around, she asked me a nonsensical question. "Why aren't you married, ma'am?" It's clearly a malicious question. As I was struggling to answer, I could hear the female employees behind Harris chuckling. Even the wide-eyed male employees started to laugh. Led on by them. One of the female employees said, "Hey, that's rude," but then praised Harris, saying, "You're such a funny girl, Harris." From then on, Harris started to ask me more and more disrespectful questions that left me at a loss for answers, thinking she would be praised for making fun of me. "Miss Thompson, have you ever had a boyfriend? How many years have you not had a boyfriend? How many people have you been with? Are you by any chance not interested in men?" Harris kept asking me these personal questions without considering my feelings at all, and the level of disrespect only increased over time, and the surrounding employees seemed to find it amusing, encouraging Harris as if they wanted her to do more. I suppose she was happy to be recognized as one of them by the other female employees. Trying to meet their expectations, she kept intensifying her remarks to me. As things escalated, she began to flaunt her own status to me. "My boyfriend just gave me a designer bag as a gift the other day. I'm going to a high-end restaurant tonight that's booked out for the next 6 months. Do you just eat macaroni and cheese at home, Thompson?" This kind of petty one-upmanship had been her modus operandi. "Miss Thompson, you don't seem to have any connection with luxury items. How pathetic," she would throw in with her sarcasm. Rather than feeling angry, I was beginning to find it impressive. As this silly back and forth went on, I found myself increasingly burdened with Miss Harris's work. Miss Harris, who was rather overbearing, had an invincible disregard for fear. The other female employees seemed unable to deal with her, and she rapidly turned into a monster. Then one day, after some time had passed, something happened. When Miss Harris came to work, she was very upbeat and started talking to me. "I got engaged." As she said this, she showed me a picture of her fiancé, even though I hadn't asked. When I responded with a polite, "That's nice," and tried to return to my work, Miss Harris continued to chatter on. "My fiancé is really rich, kind, handsome, and perfect. Are you jealous? I'm going to be happy leaving you here, Miss Thompson." With that, she brought her smartphone screen closer to me. She continually belittled me and bragged about how amazing her fiancé was and how she had hit the jackpot by getting engaged to him. "Well, I am jealous. Congratulations, truly," I said. Miss Harris, looking satisfied, said, "Okay, I'm going back to work," and returned to her desk. When it comes to this, it's almost refreshing. I sighed deeply. I need to focus on my work. Just as I was trying to switch my mindset, I heard the other female employees talking behind me. She's really getting carried away, isn't she? Seriously, just because she's getting married, she's acting so giddy? What's up with that? Like she can actually be happy after getting married. She probably can't even do housework and might cheat on him. I agree. She's definitely the type who would get divorced quickly once her charms wear off. Totally agree. As one of them began to vent, the others joined in, spewing complaints. Out of pure curiosity, I asked the female employees, "Weren't you all friends with Miss Harris?" "What are you talking about? No way." They all laughed. "We would never be friends with a woman like that. It's just her thinking we're her friends." I see. It seems that Miss Harris had managed to make enemies of the female employees again. They didn't mind when she was bullying me, but as she increasingly tried to one-up me, she started doing the same thing to the other female employees. I sighed quietly. Aren't you the ones who boosted and fanned her flames? From then on, Miss Harris boasted about her fiancé almost daily. Apparently, he comes from a prestigious family, is highly educated, earns a high income, and his parents' home is located in an upscale residential area in Manhattan.
This has nothing to do with you, Miss Thompson, who always looks so shabby. It seems like you could continue to live a simple life alone. The only people who would marry you are likely to be leftovers. Nobody high profile or high earning would ever consider someone like you. You may have to settle for someone uneducated and unemployed. But even such a man might refuse you, considering you're a dried-up old maid.
Miss Harris would say, laughing.
I'll invite you to my wedding, Miss Thompson. It will be your last shining moment.
I certainly did not want to attend that. I couldn't care less about her wedding dress, and I'm sure I'd be seated with those female employees. Even if the venue is glamorous and the food is delicious, I wouldn't want to be there. As I was thinking this, Miss Harris said,
"Oh, I just remembered. I'll show you a picture of his parents' house."
And she began manipulating her smartphone. I wasn't interested in her fiancé's parents' house at all.
"Oh, I found it. This is it,"
Miss Harris said, bringing her smartphone screen closer to me. I saw a house that looked familiar.
"Isn't it amazing? Such a gorgeous and wonderful house being his parents' home. They must be extremely wealthy. All this will eventually be mine. I'm on top of the world. I'm now part of the rich gang. If I feel like it, I'll invite you over, Miss Thompson."
Miss Harris said this, but my eyes couldn't leave the screen of her smartphone.
"Oh my, did that surprise you? Feel free to take a look at the pictures of the interior as well."
As she slid the phone across, more familiar scenes appeared. This is...
You can't see or enter such a luxurious house, can you? Are you envious?
I cut her off in a hurry and said, this is actually my parents' house."
"What? What are you talking about?"
"Well, I mean this house in the photo." When I said that, Miss Harris looked shocked.
"Huh? What are you saying? Just because you're envious, you shouldn't make such a lame claim."
No matter what she says, I'm convinced this is my parents' house. Besides, I'm an only child, so it's not like I have brothers who could marry her or anyone else. The only ones living in this house are my parents, who have entered their 60s, and our beloved dog. Miss Harris seems to think I was joking and laughed out loud.
"Oh, Miss Thompson, you're so high level, keeping a straight face while fooling around."
But I said seriously, "No, I'm not kidding. This is really true," she said, pointing at the photo.
"But look, his car is parked here too, right? And how could you take pictures inside a house that isn't yours?"
Despite her objections, the photos she was showing me were undoubtedly my parents' house. The placement of things, the floor plan, it was all exactly like the house I grew up in. Then it hit me. I remembered a sales guy who was often coming and going from my parents' house. I'd met him there and talked to him. He was desperately trying to get a contract, telling my parents all sorts of convenient things. I asked Miss Harris her fiancé's name. It was the same name as the salesman. I see. So that man, Aaron, was pretending my parents' house was his own to impress her. What a lame guy. Does he think he could get away with that? I noticed other signs that Aaron wasn't a very good person. He was always smiling, and even when my parents said,
"We think we'll pass on the contract this time,"
he would cheerfully respond,
"I see. Well, I'll come by again next time."
But the moment he left the house, I saw from my bedroom window that he had a really scary look on his face. Maybe he was just angry because he didn't get the contract, but it left me a really bad feeling. There's no need to tell Miss Harris about this, but that house is definitely my parents' house. I won't back down on that. Miss Harris was raising her voice.
"What? That house is Miss Thompson's parents' house. That's impossible."
No matter how much I explained, she wouldn't believe me. So I decided to take her to my parents' house after work that day. We arrived at my parents' house, and I took her through the gate. I opened the front door and said, "I'm home." Then my parents came out with a smile.
"Welcome home. When you said you were coming home all of a sudden, we wondered what was going on. You even brought a friend."
"It's not often we see you, but it's nice to see your face after a long time."
"We have to serve something since you brought a friend."
"We have some sweets we brought when we went on a trip to France with your aunt. We'll serve them with some tea." Looking at Miss Harris, my parents smiled happily. I mentioned the name of her fiancé and asked my parents about him.
"Oh, the salesman."
"He was here just the other day." Hearing my parents respond like that, Miss Harris seemed to accept the truth. When we arrived in my room, she suddenly began to cry. "What happened? Are you sad because you were lied to about his family home?" Sure, being lied to might have been shocking, but it was not that much of a disaster, I thought. Then Miss Harris said, "I'm sorry," and began to talk about her engagement with Aaron. Apparently, Miss Harris met Aaron at a social gathering. At that time, Aaron told her that he held a position in a major corporation, and when they were alone, he informed her that his family was wealthy, which caused her to fall for his good looks and the status. After that, they went on a few dates and their relationship developed. However, despite Aaron's position in a major corporation, he turned out to be surprisingly stingy. At first, he paid for all of their dates, but gradually, he started making Miss Harris pay, claiming he had no cash on hand. When Miss Harris said something about it, Aaron suddenly proposed, saying,
"Actually, I want to save money because I'm going independent. Plus, we need to save for our wedding fund, right?"
Caught off guard by the proposal, Miss Harris got carried away and started to shell out cash as he directed. Aaron took advantage of this, borrowing more and more money from Miss Harris, and before she knew it, she had handed him a substantial sum. Still, she fell blindly for his sweet words like,
"It's for our happy married life together."
If you look at it objectively, you would think that if his family was really wealthy, he wouldn't need to borrow money from his girlfriend. But Miss Harris, who had fallen head over heels in love, seemed to trust him completely. But now it seems, even Miss Harris had come to realize it was a lie. Miss Harris came to apologize to me in tears.
"Miss Thompson, I'm really sorry. I apologize for the terrible attitude I've been showing until now. I know I can't be forgiven, but please let me apologize."
She explained in tears that she was led by the other female employees to harass me. She didn't really like to gossip or show off, but she was instigated by the other female employees and pressured to join in, or else she would be left out like before. It was hard, but she said she managed to endure because she had Aaron. Again, she apologized and shed big tears. Seeing Mrs. Harris like that made me feel sorry for her. She was really struggling in her own way. We could leave those female employees, but the liar must be dealt with. In a way, my family and I are involved too. We need to teach him a lesson. Let's teach that guy a lesson. I decided to have Miss Harris call Aaron. When we arranged to meet at a cafe, he changed his complexion as soon as he saw my face. Aaron, looking uncomfortable, lowered his gaze. I told him I was going to report his misuse of the photo of his family home and his deception of my junior colleague to his workplace. He turned pale and started apologizing.
"Please, forgive me for that."
"So why did you lie and deceive Miss Harris?" Apparently, he had approached her because he thought she had money, since she wore nice clothes and branded bags. He began to brazen it up. and turned to Miss Harris and said something outrageous.
Mainly, it's your fault for coming after me without seeing through my lies. I showed you a nice dream, so you should consider it a gratitude fee.
I was stunned at his audacity. It reminded me of the hidden side I saw from the window at my family home. You proposed marriage. That's why Miss Harris trusted you. Then Aaron replied with a defiant laugh.
Well, I thought it was the best thing to say.
What do you mean? So you had no intention of marrying Miss Harris?
Well, yes. I'm not thinking about getting married right away.
Aaron casually made such a statement. Miss Harris couldn't take it anymore and started crying. Seeing Miss Harris crying, Aaron looked annoyed. What a terrible man he is. There's no need to show mercy to someone like him. I pulled out a voice recorder and said, I recorded what you just said. And you know you can demand compensation for breaking off an engagement without a reasonable cause. Aaron turned pale and frantically said,
Whoa, that's gonna be a problem.
Choose between reporting this incident to the company or repaying the money you borrowed from Miss Harris along with some damages, I said. Hearing this, Aaron replied,
I'll pay back the money,
and dropped his shoulders. That's how we came to an agreement that he would pay back Miss Harris. It seems that Aaron was cheating, and his mistress was spending money lavishly, more than his salary could cover. But he was so smitten with her that he was siphoning money from Miss Harris to keep her satisfied. After Aaron left the cafe, Miss Harris tightly grasped my hand and repeatedly expressed her gratitude. She apologized once again for everything that had happened and promised to change her ways. Since then, Miss Harris has become quite fond of me and no longer exhibits her previous attitude. Even when other female employees act unpleasantly, she no longer lets it bother her and concentrates on her work. Seeing her like this, the female employees still badmouth her, but I think they're just not worth dealing with. Later, when one of the female employees got engaged, a nasty war of words began among them. Petty jealousies and grudges started affecting their work, and a fed-up supervisor escalated the matter, resulting in each of them being transferred to different departments. Being on their own, these women weren't particularly harmful, and it seems they are now working quietly in their new departments. Our department has become peaceful and calm, and Miss Harris has been able to work more freely. Lately, Miss Harris and I have been having lunch together, sharing our hobbies. Thanks to her, I've developed an interest in fashion, and she has become a big fan of anime. I may not be friendly with everyone, but having someone like Miss Harris, whom I can trust, has made working at this company more enjoyable than ever. Money and status may be attractive, but they are only a part of life, not everything. I may be plain, but I believe that being able to live a peaceful and calm daily life is truly the greatest happiness.
I made myself lunch today. I want to be a better cook, so please have a taste, she said.
All right, let's go to a nearby park and eat, I replied.
Yes,
she replied happily.
I'm sorry, I heard my husband was brought in. As I ran into the treatment room, the eyes of the doctors, nurses, and my husband were all on me. I wondered at the momentary silence, but when my eyes met my husband's, I was assured that he was safe and that his life was not in danger for the time being. But the next moment was outrageous. My name is Tanya. I'm a 30-year-old nurse. My husband, Steve, is 2 years older than me and a government employee. Unlike my previous boyfriends, I was attracted to him because of his seriousness. I don't know if it's because of my profession as a nurse or my nature, but I don't have a hard time serving others, and I am happy when people depend on me. Hence, helping out my boyfriend, lending him money, and such things were a daily occurrence. Even though I knew in my head that I shouldn't do it, I would do it when I was asked to. Many of my fellow nurses are like that, and relationships are always a topic of our conversations. But then, a turning point came for me. I met my husband at a blind date with fellow nurses. He seemed quiet and serious. He was the type of guy I had never been around before, and I was attracted to him from the start. Other girls said he looked too serious or plain, and there were no rivals. We exchanged contact information after a strong push from me. I was also the one who asked him to go out with me. The relationship lasted 3 years. It's been a smooth relationship, with no conflict or betrayals. Many relationships break up after a few months, and it would have been better if the relationship had lasted a year, but with Steve, it had lasted 3 years. I said to him, "Well, things are going to continue to go well. Shall we get married?" He proposed to me, and we got married. My husband had little dating experience, and his hobbies were reading and playing games at home. He was someone who rarely went out, but he was a bookworm and never ran out of topics to talk about. He is not a fan of the outdoors, but he seems to have a lot of gaming buddies, and we often play games while talking online. He says that since he started dating me, he has had more opportunities to go out. He was interested in it just because he didn't have anyone to go to, and he enjoys it wherever we go. My in-laws are a bit far away, about a 2-hour drive. I have the impression that my in-laws are gentle people, but Steve is the youngest of 3 siblings, and his in-laws are quite elderly, so we don't get to see them often. After meeting them at the wedding and the wedding ceremony, we only went to greet them once, at New Year's. We exchanged mid-year and year-end gifts, and I do call them, but I work nights, so our hours don't match, and I don't get a chance to talk to them very often. My husband and I go out somewhere when our days off coincide, and we do our share of the household chores. I thought we were doing well. However, it was about 3 months ago that I sensed something was wrong with my husband. When I came home after work, he was asleep on the sofa. A beer can was lying on the table. "You'll catch a cold," I said to him. He looked at me sleepily, rubbing his eyes. "Isn't it unusual for you to be sleeping here and drinking beer?" I asked. "I was at an online drinking party with my gaming buddies. I was having too much fun and drank too much. I don't understand this world, but as long as my husband was having fun, I thought it was fine. But this was a mistake." After that, similar incidents continued, and one day when I saw my husband, I noticed that his hair had changed. "What's wrong with your hair?" He had never dyed his hair before, but now it was all done up and brown. "Is this hair okay at your job?" My husband is a government employee, and I thought he told me that the regulations are very strict. "What was wrong with it? I just thought recently that I should enjoy dressing up while I'm young. What do you think? Does it look good on me?" My husband was not a sophisticated man for his age, but he had suddenly changed, hadn't he? I'm not sure if it looks good on him or not, maybe because I'm not used to seeing it, but it doesn't look good on him. I didn't say it looked good on him. "Oh, I see," I simply replied. A few days later, he got his ears pierced. Again, I didn't think this looked good on him. Was he having a midlife crisis? I thought about that, but maybe he's having trouble with his job or something. "Hey, what's going on with you lately?" Unable to remain silent, I asked him straightforwardly, but he didn't give me a clear answer. "Nothing." And then my husband went to the bedroom. I knew I could not go on like this, but there was no one to fill in for the nurse who had retired not long ago, and I was so busy that I could no longer afford to pay attention to my husband. Around the time this was going on, Steve said, "My dad's not feeling well lately, so I'm going home for the weekend to check on him for a while." My father-in-law is old, and my husband must be worried about him. I nodded my head in agreement, and my husband began to leave the house every weekend. I tried to be considerate in my own way by cooking for him and texting him during work hours, but he rarely responded. Just when I thought it was time to have a proper discussion with him, I received an unbelievable call while I was at work. "Tanya, the police are trying to contact you." A colleague of mine called and passed the phone to me. "The police? Why?" I picked up the phone, feeling uneasy. He told me that Steve had been in an accident and had to be taken to the emergency room. What? What about my husband? Is he okay?" I was so upset that I questioned the police officer on the phone. He told me that he had heard it was not life-threatening and that he had been taken to our hospital where I worked. I rushed to the emergency ward. I asked the ward nurse where to find him and hurried to the treatment room. When I opened the door, I was met with the stares of the people there. "Excuse me, I heard my husband was brought in." The doctor looked doubtful, and the nurse's eyes swam. I felt uncomfortable, but when my eyes met my husband's, I was relieved. The nurse explained briefly. They said he had a leg injury that was so severe that they were going to cut his pants in order to treat him. When I looked at my husband again, his pants had already been cut off. Then, my husband, noticing my gaze, shouted, "Tanya, don't look at me!" What? I'm a nurse, and I wonder if my husband thinks it's embarrassing for me to see him have his pants cut off? Certainly that may be the case, but it's common sense to cut off clothing when you can't remove it normally due to injury. "Just get out of here!" my husband shouted. I stood there, not understanding what was going on. Even though my husband screamed, the hands of the doctors and nurses did not stop rushing to treat him. It was only natural. If I listened to every word they said, it might take too much time and stall the procedure. Suddenly, something extraordinary grabs my attention. "What is that?" I muttered to myself. On the inside of my husband's thigh was a tattoo. The injury being treated was on his left leg, while the tattoo was on his right leg. Fortunately, the right leg did not appear to be damaged, and the eye was drawn to the leg that had been injured. Scrawled onto the inside of my husband's thigh is someone's name. It seems to be a woman's name. Yasmin. Who? My husband continued to be shocked by my words, but I got out of there once the procedure continued. I talked to a fellow nurse in the emergency ward who told me that apparently my husband had not been brought in alone. She said she thought it was a couple who was married or dating because he was brought in with a woman his own age who had been in the accident with him. When he checked the name of the woman who was transported with him, her first name is Yasmin. It matches the name on the tattoo. Does this mean they were having an affair? I kept asking myself. My coworker said she had brown hair and pierced ears and also had a tattoo with his name on it. It didn't add up. I asked the nurse who treated the woman, and she told me that my husband's name was also tattooed on her inner thigh. I think it's safe to say they are having an affair. But what kind of nerve does a woman have to have the name of her cheating partner tattooed on her body? I can only think that she must be unstable. As I was thinking this, I remembered the call from the police. The police first called my mother and father-in-law's house, but my in-laws cannot drive, so they asked where I worked and called me. This means that my in-laws must be worried. So I called their house, and my father-in-law answered, "Is Steve gonna be all right?" He was worried, so I told him that Steve had been in an accident and had been taken to the hospital, but was not in life-threatening condition. My father-in-law's voice told me he was clearly relieved. So I asked him, "By the way, Dad, have you been feeling better?" My father-in-law said he had no idea what I was talking about. I clarified, "Because Steve said you were not feeling well and he's been gone every weekend. He said he was taking care of you." I had no idea. It was all a lie. I was relieved to hear that my father-in-law was in good health and that there was nothing wrong with him during his recent medical checkup, but the problem was, where was my husband going? If it wasn't to my in-laws' house, then it must have been to the place where he was having the affair. But I had no proof. After finishing my working hours, I went home without seeing my husband, who was admitted overnight for treatment. I went home and began to go through my husband's belongings, thoroughly examining them. The evidence was easy to find. I found photos of him with this woman, hotel receipts, and even an email confirmation for reservations to a romantic resort. According to the schedule, they must have had this accident on the way home from the resort. The accident was a car crash on a mountain road. No one else was injured, and neither Steve nor this Yasmin woman appeared to be in life-threatening condition. However, since Steve had injured his leg, and it might be difficult for him to walk properly for a while, normally I should be worried about him as a wife, but I don't have that feeling anymore. I couldn't believe he lied about visiting his parents, saying he was worried about them, much less was lying to cover up an affair with another woman. I wondered if Steve's recent strange behavior, such as dyeing his hair and getting his ears pierced, was due to the influence of this woman. I told a fellow nurse and asked her to refer me to a lawyer who was good at divorce matters. The next day, I headed to the hospital room with my husband's belongings. My husband seemed to have hit his head and was so confused that he could not remember what had happened in the treatment room yesterday. Honestly, I didn't even care about the truth anymore. I left the hospital room without even having a conversation with him because I had a shift to get to. When I finished work, I went to see my lawyer and told him what happened. He told me that with that much evidence, I would have enough to sue. I just wanted to get a divorce as soon as possible. I couldn't have that man come out of the hospital and live in the same space. I felt so betrayed by my husband that my anger outweighed my sadness. From there, I found a new place to live and moved out on my own. Only my husband's belongings remain in the house. I planned to be patient until the day my husband was discharged from the hospital. I thought about divorcing him while he was in the hospital, but he is in the hospital where I work, so it would be troublesome if something happened to him there. Then, we could get a divorce when he gets out of the hospital. I drove to pick my husband up from the hospital. I have to make a quick stop. Please come with me. He looked at me strangely, but nodded. I headed for a family restaurant near our house. When I entered the restaurant with my husband, the lawyer was waiting for us. My husband looked at me as if he didn't understand what was going on, but I guess he was tired of standing on a leg that was not fully healed yet. He sat down quietly, and I thrust the divorce papers at him. "Divorce? Why?" my husband shouted in a crazy voice. I seethed in my anger silently for a moment. "What do you mean, why? You had an affair. You even had your accident on your romantic trip. The evidence of your affair was found in our own home. What do you think you're doing? Besides, you lied about your father not feeling well. You lied about going to your parents' house to see this woman." My husband's face turned pale. "You think I am naive? Yasmin, the woman you were having an affair with, is out of the hospital. I heard that her injuries were less severe than yours. I can't believe she was brought to the hospital where I work." I smiled wryly, and my husband's face turned even paler. "You will pay for the anguish you've caused me." I handed him the divorce papers and a pen. My husband did not take the pen. "Is it only your leg that's injured, or have you lost the use of your hand as well?" I sarcastically said to him, and he finally picked up the pen. But he wouldn't sign. He only stared at the paper. "Why don't you sign it? Are you scared at the idea of starting over? You think this was just some game?" My husband froze, as if I had hit the nail on the head. I gave him a cold stare. "You're kidding, right? I can't be with my husband with the cheater's name tattooed right on his body." He looked at me in surprise. What? What are you talking about?" He may have been trying to deceive me, but I was unmoved. "You really don't remember? I was there when you were rushed to the emergency room. You were yelling at me not to look." Then my husband's face changed color. "Sound familiar? I saw the tattoo on the inside of your thigh, too. But what kind of a man tattoos his mistress's name on his body? Even if we didn't get divorced, do you think you can hide it from me?" My husband was slack-jawed. "No, that's not it," he said. I could only sigh at the sight of my husband. Dyed hair, pierced ears, and tattoos, and with the name of the person you cheated on your wife with? At least do it after you get divorced. While Steve was in the hospital, I actually met Yasmin face to face. I didn't go out of my way to see her or anything. We just bumped into one another. She was lost in the hospital, looking for the gift shop, and she asked me for directions. "The gift shop is just around the corner. Oh, and you're Yasmin, right?" "My husband is Steve," I said, as she checked my nameplate, turned pale, and left at a speed that was hard to believe for an injured person. "Please don't run in the hospital," I called after her. I think she was more embarrassed than I was. She probably heard from Steve that I worked here, but she probably never thought she would run into me at such a big hospital. Quite the stroke of luck. Seeing how my husband said he would rather start over with me than with someone he was supposedly loved enough to get a tattoo, I asked my Steve if he had been dumped by Yasmin. Steve didn't think I would ever find out, and apparently would rather suffer and stay married to me rather than have me file for alimony. I can't believe he thought he wouldn't get caught with her name tattooed on his body. And breaking up with him wouldn't erase the fact that he cheated on her, though. Nurses have a high rate of attracting the wrong kind of men. I'd been the same way, but when I married Steve, I thought he was a serious man and that he wouldn't betray me. And then He was stupid enough to get a tattoo of the person he cheated on me with, which is the worst thing ever. I'm so blind. I'll leave the rest to the attorneys, and I hope I never see him again." The lawyer looked at me and nodded. "I've moved out, so you'll have to get a cab or whatever to get home on your own. Bye." My husband looked at me with a pitiful face, his mouth agape. He would probably be crippled until his leg wound healed, but he deserved it. After that, I was divorced without incident. I also got alimony. Thanks to that, Steve was left broke and bankrupt. To his surprise, he found out that Yasmin was married to a colleague from his office, and they had actually found out by chance that he and her husband were online game buddies. Of course, Yasmin's husband filed a claim for alimony against her as well. I heard that Steve had to quit his job, and the rumors just keep on spreading. But I got the alimony paid, and I don't care if Steve quits his job or not. After the divorce was finalized, my former in-laws contacted me, but they were furious when I politely explained the situation. They apologized to me and said they would never let Steve hurt me again. This time, the word spread among my fellow nurses, but they all laughed it off, and I am still laughing my way through it. Now, I live alone, and I'm free to do whatever I want.
Thanks for always finishing your lunch. Huh? I haven't been eating it. What? I've been throwing it away. I couldn't believe my ears. I get up early to prepare his lunch every morning, and turns out he's been throwing it away. Why would you do that? It's my lunch. I can do what I want, right? I was heartbroken. Seeing my husband laugh as he said that, I lost faith in him as a person, and I decided to get back at him. I show him that I'm not always a submissive wife. Please marry me. Yes. 1 year after we started dating, I married my husband. We met at work. He worked at the head office, and I worked at the sales office. While we were dating, he was always putting me first, taking me to my favorite places, letting me eat my favorite foods. Every day I was happy, thinking about the wonderful life waiting for us. But his attitude changed drastically after we got married. He would always nitpick on everything I do and made all the decisions himself. He was a controlling husband, and things gradually got worse. Recently, something truly unforgivable happened. Huh? What did you say just now? I told you to start making lunch every day from tomorrow. Why? It's normal for a wife to make her husband's lunch, right? 3 years into our marriage, my husband suddenly started saying this. I work too, so I'm busy in the mornings. Honestly, I don't want to take on more than I have to. We used to eat lunch separately, so why the sudden change? I was puzzled. I don't want meal preps. I want freshly made ones every morning. From that day on, I started getting up at 5 a.m. to make his lunch. I wasn't particularly good at cooking to begin with, and even making something as simple as scrambled eggs took a considerable amount of time. So preparing the side dishes for lunch from morning was quite a task. Because of this, I got less sleep, and it was extremely tough. And then came that night. Seeing the empty lunchbox in the sink, I felt relieved, thinking, oh, he ate it all. From then on, I made his lunch every day, but he never expressed any opinion. So out of curiosity, I asked him, "By the way, is there anything particular you want in your lunch?" "No, not really." "I see. I thought you liked it since you always finish it." "Huh? I haven't been eating it." "What?" "I've been throwing it away." I couldn't believe my ears. I was baffled as to why he would throw away the lunch I got up early every morning to make. Why would you do that? "Well, your cooking is bland. It doesn't make me want to eat. But I get up early and put a lot of effort into making it. Then make something that makes me want to eat. But you don't have to throw it away. You made it for me. I can do whatever I want with it." I couldn't believe it. Why would he have me make lunch in the first place? When I asked him, he nonchalantly responded, "Because it's fun." He made me make lunch just so he could throw it away. I never thought he would do such a thing. I was so heartbroken that I cried myself to sleep that night and didn't make his lunch the next day. Then my husband got furious. I saw no point in preparing his lunch, knowing that he won't have it. But if I snapped back, I knew he would throw a temper, so I decided to fix his lunch again, starting the next day. But it's going to be thrown away anyway. Feeling more and more hollow each day as I made his lunch, I gradually began to prepare fewer items. You've been slacking off recently, haven't you? Do you think I wouldn't notice? I'm sorry, but if you're not going to eat it, it's the variety of food that makes me feel refreshed when I throw it away. Don't you get it? I don't understand at all. And because of my lack of sleep every day, I was so weakened that I started making mistakes at work. That's when I heard a certain rumor. It was that my husband was bad-mouthing me. When I asked my colleague, who went on a business trip from our sales office to the headquarters for details, he was apparently saying things like, "useless wife," and "she can't do anything without me. She has no will of her own." It's bad enough that he's saying these things behind my back, but hearing such a thing, I can't just sit back and take it. On the weekend, to confirm the truth, I asked a close friend who works at the headquarters, Mickey. I've heard it too. Really? Well, your husband's basically harsh on women. I don't know if it's because he's good at his job, but he seems to think that women should only be assigned to make photocopies or something. No way. He wasn't like that before you got married. Did you do something? It's the other way around. I'm the one being treated poorly. How's he treating you? I told Mickey about him throwing away my lunch. As she listened, she got very angry and hugged me as she cried. You've been very patient. I can't imagine how hard it must have been. Why are you crying, Mickey? I'm crying for you, idiot. But that's unacceptable. He needs to learn his lesson. That's true. He's wronged you. Are you not considering getting a divorce? I have concerns about money right now. You can handle that. I'm more worried about you. You're numb to the pain even after being mistreated like that. That's a sign you're not okay. It's not like I'm numb. I'm pissed. Then Mickey looked at me intently. Do you want to get a divorce? In reality, the word divorce had been hovering in my mind. Fortunately, we had no children. I found myself wondering if I should continue living with my abusive husband for the rest of my life. To think things through, I wanted to make use of this opportunity. I looked straight into Mickey's eyes and said, "There's something I want to try. Will you help me?" "Of course. Thank you. I want to use your position." You see, Mickey is actually the granddaughter of our chairman. Moreover, she's currently working as an executive assistant at the headquarters. I can't not make use of such a powerful ally. That's quite an idea. I get it. I'm starting to look forward to this. If this goes well, I can get my husband to be ashamed of himself. On the following Monday, as usual, I handed my husband his lunch. Do you have time tonight? What's up all of a sudden? You know Mickey, my friend who works as an executive assistant? Yeah, what about her? Mickey says she'd really like to invite us to dinner. Apparently the chairman will also be there. The chairman? He wants to show appreciation for his hardworking employees. If it's a request from the chairman, I can't refuse. Alright. I thought he would be suspicious, but surprisingly, he agreed quite easily. Perhaps he was pleased with the thought of being invited by the chairman. With that, everything was in place. After work, I met up with my husband and confirmed, once again, that he had thrown away his lunch. Then we went to the restaurant specified by Mickey for dinner with the chairman. Feeling good about the fancy place, my husband began to boast about how competent he was. Today, I finished my work early and helped my colleagues. You know, being reliable is hard work when you're this good at your job. Is that so? The chairman's granddaughter is beautiful, and she's an executive assistant, so I bet she's good at her job, too. I'm just doing my job like everyone else. You don't need to be so humble. You're far different from my wife. He got on my nerves a bit, but the chairman moved on to the main topic. You get a packed lunch from your wife every day, don't you? Yes, she does work hard on that. What a wonderful thing! A lovingly prepared lunch from your wife. But it's the same thing every day. I'd like something extravagant once in a while. That's not something you should expect from your wife. Really? Don't you, as a chairman, get extravagant lunches? I prefer something simple. It's an everyday thing, after all. Oh, you're just joking. You've even arranged for us to eat in such a wonderful place today. My husband's attitude was completely different from usual. He must be trying to put on a good show in front of the chairman. I watched nervously, not knowing how it would turn out. So, you don't cook? The chairman asked. Cook? No, that's woman's work. I don't think that's the case nowadays. I think it's normal for men to work outside home, and for women to take care of home. We both work, but ideally, I'd like my wife to stay at home. Really? Men are breadwinners, and women are homemakers. That's how it's supposed to be. That's a rather old-fashioned way of thinking. Really? I think all men in the world would think the same way. Despite the increase in women's participation in society, they end up taking a maternity leave or quit their job. In the end, it's men who run the society. And it's the same in our company as well. Don't you agree, Mr. Chairman? That was the first time I'd heard such a thing. But he should know that we can't live on his income alone. He was spouting off derogatory comments about women, but the chairman avoided addressing them and continued the conversation. What do you think of men who cook? He asked. They're feminine. I've heard it's becoming more common, but I don't understand it. What if I told you that I enjoy cooking? Would you think I'm feminine? Huh? And what if I told you that I, not your wife, made today's lunch? What would you do? You're kidding, right? You could feel the chairman's anger seeping through his words, and it's understandable, because his handmade lunch was thrown away. Hey, what's this about? What do you mean, what? You said yourself you didn't eat your lunch today, right? The plan that Mickey and I hatched involved getting some help from the chairman, who had recently taken up cooking as a hobby. Yesterday, the chairman had kindly given us some of his homemade dishes, which I repackaged and handed over to my husband this morning. You set me up? It was far different from what I usually cook. Anyone could tell at a glance. My husband, who must have thrown it away without checking, was momentarily at a loss for words. Watching this, Mickey speaks up. Aren't you more concerned about the terrible things you're doing? What terrible things? It's strange to throw away food every day without even eating it. That's right. It's the worst to just throw away something someone else has made for you, without any appreciation. Well, if I had known it was made by you, sir, I wouldn't have thrown it away. My husband is trying to hastily backtrack, looking pale at the chairman's words. So, you wouldn't throw away the lunch I make, but it's okay for you to throw away the ones prepared by your wife? Well, she's no good of a wife. Can't a husband do whatever he wants? That was my last straw. You are really the worst. What are you on about all of a sudden? Don't you realize how much your actions are hurting me? Huh? Why are you getting so worked up? I can't stand it anymore. I want a divorce. My husband stood, looking perplexed. He glances around the room, realizing he has no one to back him up, and begins to panic. What are you talking about? How can you just say something like that out of the blue? It's not out of the blue. I've been thinking about it for a long time. Where did the kind man I married go? I was in love with you then. I don't love who you are now. As I conveyed my feelings, tears began to spill. I took out the divorce papers that I had put in my bag and placed them on the table. All you need to do is sign. I filled in the rest. You're serious? If this looks like a joke to you, you're more helpless than I thought. Do you think you can survive after divorce? I'll be fine. I'll be getting alimony from you after all. What? Watching this scene, the chairman began to speak. You seem to have some prejudices against women. That's not what I mean. I've heard from my granddaughter about your attitude towards our female employees. Coupled with this incident, this isn't something I can overlook as a chairman. What are you talking about? I'll let my son, the president, know about this. Wait, sir! I can't lose my job now! Before worrying about your job, there are other things you should do first. Taken aback by the chairman's angry voice, my husband was at a loss for words. Not once have you apologized. When you do something wrong, you apologize. Even a kid in elementary school knows that. I'm very sorry. Not to me, to your wife. Can't you even understand that? You're making me sick. Mickey, let's go. Sure. Linda, let's go. Huh? What are you waiting for? You're not going back home, right? You're coming with us. Seeing the desperate look on my husband's face, Mickey and I left the restaurant, feeling quite relieved. The next day at work, I got a call from Mickey. Your ex-husband got demoted. Demoted? When HR investigated his work behavior, there were complaints from female employees, one after another. Is that so? And apparently his performance in sales has plummeted. He deserves it. It seems that he was transferred to a sales branch in the countryside where the women were quite formidable. At first, he seemed to resist and continued his tyrannical behavior. But the place was filled with tough women, like old-school matriarchs. And within a week, he was unable to talk back. Now, he is so respectful of the woman in the office that he even voluntarily makes copies. 2 weeks later, Mickey contacted me again. I was issued a notice of termination and was told that I would be transferred to work at the head office. And a secretary position. What does this mean? I think this is the chairman's doing. It seems that the chairman took a liking to me after seeing my declaration the other day. So he spoke with the president to allow me to work as a trainee secretary with Mickey. Oh, and there's a message from Grandpa. What? He said, "We're going to have a dinner party once a month where you'll eat his homemade food." This is an order coming from him as a chairman. What? Chairman's gonna cook for me? He apparently wants to treat you. He even mentioned taking cooking classes. Later, the divorce was finalized successfully. I was able to receive my desired amount of alimony, which was $20,000. I lost a husband, but I gained a new friend. I'm happy. From now on, I plan to have my chairman teach me how to cook delicious meals for myself.
I'm going to spend the weekend at my parents' house. I asked my husband if everything was okay as a response to his sudden declaration. It's my parents' 40th wedding anniversary. I figured I should celebrate with them. Really? Then I should go too, right? I thought about it, but it's their anniversary, not a birthday. I'd feel bad dragging you away from your busy work schedule. He was right. I'd be coming off a night shift that day. I decided to embrace his words as a chance to relax at home. I get along well with his parents, and they always take good care of me. Maybe I can send something later to celebrate. My name is Rachel. I'm a nurse, and I'm 32. I met my husband John 3 years ago. We've been married for 2 years now. It feels like we've been together for a long time, but it was nothing compared to his parents' 40 years. His parents have a beautiful relationship, always going out together and even holding hands while taking walks. I look up to them, especially since my parents are divorced. I've always dreamed of having a similar kind of relationship with my husband. One Friday night, John came home with bags full of groceries. I'm cooking at home tomorrow. Cooking is a hobby of his, and he's quite good at it. While I tend to focus on whether something is edible, John is the type who relentlessly pursues the deliciousness of food. We usually take turns cooking, and John's meals are always delicious. But of course they are. He uses quality ingredients. The worst part is, he always leaves me to do the dishes. Not just the dishes, but the pots and pans too. I've asked him to not just cook, but to do the dishes as well. But he never seemed to listen. Don't leave the dishes for your mother to take care of, okay? I reminded him, not wanting to burden his mother on such a special day. He brushed it off with a casual, yeah, as if he didn't take it too seriously, which left me feeling slightly irritated. I asked him to say hi to his parents for me and started getting ready for my night shift. The following day after my shift, I was woken up by a call on my cell phone. It was from my father-in-law. This was unusual because my mother-in-law is usually the one to call. As I answered the phone, I heard my father-in-law's frantic voice on the other end.
Rachel, my wife has collapsed. What should I do?
What? I jumped out of bed and asked my father-in-law for details. Apparently, she suddenly collapsed, and it seems she has a fever. It's been pretty hot out, so it could be a heat stroke. She was only half conscious, and so I told him to call an ambulance and to let me know when he found out where she'd be taken. I decided to drive to my in-laws' house, which is about a 40-minute drive from my home. I tried calling my husband, but he didn't pick up or call back. As I started to give up on trying to reach him, my father-in-law called again. As suspected, she had a heat stroke and had been rushed to the hospital. I arrived at the hospital and found my father-in-law. He told me that my mother-in-law's condition wasn't critical and is that she is currently receiving an IV. I made my way towards her hospital room. By the way, where's John? Is he in her room? My father-in-law looked puzzled.
Wasn't he with you? I tried calling him first, but couldn't get through, so I called you. I assumed he was driving.
Hearing this, I furrowed my brow in confusion. But John was over at your place, wasn't he? Now it was my father-in-law's turn to furrow his brow. We exchanged puzzled looks as we walked, but our conversation was interrupted as we reached my mother-in-law's room. Thank God it's nothing serious. Upon hearing that, my mother-in-law, who seemed less energetic than usual, smiled.
I'm sorry for all the trouble.
Were you at work today? I just finished my night shift, actually. Where's John? Is he working? These words hit me. He said he was heading over to cook you guys a special anniversary meal. The three of us exchanged glances. Feeling that something was off, I tried calling John again. Finally, after several attempts, I managed to get through to him. Oh, thank goodness. Where are you? He responded with something completely unexpected.
I'm at my parents', cooking up a storm as filial duty.
Sure enough, I heard the sound of chopping over the phone. I managed to think quickly and covered up my confusion. Ah, I see. I must have been half asleep. Sorry about that.
You're probably tired from work. I told them you were working, so rest up.
John insisted that he was at his parents' place. But his parents were right in front of me. So who on earth was John cooking for? Was he cheating on me? Did he show any signs of it elsewhere? I tried to recall our past interactions, but I couldn't remember anything that might confirm such a suspicion. If I had to point out something, he has been coming home late more often, and I happened to find a receipt from a store for beer and hard seltzer a while ago. I asked about the hard seltzer because John only drinks beer, but he told me that he bought some drinks with a colleague on their way home. They had a venting session while having drinks. I found it understandable and accepted his explanation. These points alone didn't constitute conclusive evidence. As I contemplated such thoughts, my concerned father-in-law came out of the room to check on me.
Is something wrong? Is John coming?
It seems like he had to make an unexpected stop at work. He needs to take care of some trouble, and he might have to work through the night today. I quickly made up a lie.
I see. I'm sorry to put you through all of this. It looks like everything's fine now, so go home and rest.
Upon hearing my father-in-law's words, I nodded and headed home. If John really was having an affair, what should I do? If he was going to come home soon, it might be best to pretend to know nothing. I still loved John, and I get along well with his parents. John was always concerned about me, whether it was about my work or my health. He always showed care and worry. Pondering my next move, I arrived home and decided to do a little digging into my husband's belongings. I entered his room. But since I go in there all the time, I didn't find anything suspicious. When I got back to the living room, I noticed a computer. I have my own laptop, so I never used this one. Maybe I'd find something. I opened up the browser history. It seemed he'd been browsing travel sites. Specifically, he was looking at hotels with kitchens. Was that why he was stocking up on groceries? Was he planning to take it to a romantic getaway with a mistress? Still, I wasn't suspicious of my husband to that extent yet. Even today, he might be gathering with friends for all I know. He might have lied about going to his parents' place because he felt guilty about going to have fun while I worked. But the next moment, that thought crumbled. I found a bookmark for a site that allows you to save photos. With a sense of dread, I looked and found definitive evidence of an affair. There were many photos of John with another woman, at dating spots, amusement parks, and some of which looked like they were on a trip somewhere. There were even some nude ones among them. What's more, it seems that it's been happening since shortly after we got married. Which meant I had been deceived by John for 2 years. Once I realized that, I knew I couldn't continue living like this. I also found their email exchanges. I learned from an email that the other woman shared the same birthday as me. Reading through the emails and looking at the photos, I saw that he gifted her jewelry and watches for her birthdays. On my birthdays, he gave me practical things like aprons to help with housework or recipe books to improve my cooking. The difference in gifts given to the mistress was like night and day. Moreover, the mistress was the one he'd been celebrating on the day of our shared birthday. I often worked night shifts, so our schedules didn't always match, but I never thought she was the higher priority. My feelings towards John took a complete 180-degree turn. The mistress was a junior colleague of John's. She even came to our wedding. I remember she came up to me and said, "I have the same birthday as you." Judging from the emails, it seemed like the mistress initiated the affair, but John had easily accepted her invitations to go out. I discovered an email where he said, "My wife earns a decent income, and she nurses me without complaints when I'm sick, so I don't plan on divorcing her for now." Upon finding this, there was no way I could stay silent. I decided on divorce. I captured some of this evidence on my phone. Upon realizing that it was already midnight, I decided to go to bed. The next day, I started looking for a divorce attorney, but I had no idea which one to choose. Just as I was lost in my thoughts, the doorbell rang. I flinched, thinking that my husband might have come home, but when I went to open the door, it turned out to be my mother-in-law. Startled, I invited her in. I learned that she returned home from the hospital yesterday, right after she got her IV, and was now here to thank me. She even brought me a small gift. As I spoke with my mother-in-law, a sense of sadness began to overwhelm me. I was lucky to have such wonderful in-laws, and the thought of leaving them was heartbreaking. Seeing my distress, my mother-in-law spoke to me kindly. "If something's bothering you, you can talk to me about it." Moved by her words, I couldn't help but pour out everything to her. When I finished, I was worried that she might be angry at what I'd said about her son. "Is that true? That's unforgivable." I showed her the evidence of John's infidelity, and she became more incensed. "Cheating makes no one happy. Why would John do something like this?" Then, to my surprise, my mother-in-law made a proposal I hadn't expected. "Rachel, why don't you pack your bags and come to our house?" "What?" While I was still surprised, my mother-in-law started making a phone call. It seemed she was talking to my father-in-law. I heard her telling him to prepare a room at their home. Encouraged by my mother-in-law, I began to pack my things. The immediate essentials I needed were just a change of clothes and my laptop. We decided on moving out the bigger items later. After I loaded my bag into my car and my mother-in-law got settled, we drove to her house where my father-in-law greeted us. There was a woman I didn't recognize sitting in the living room. Just as I was wondering who she was, I learned she was a lawyer. My father-in-law had reached out to her at my mother-in-law's request. "You have to act quickly in situations like this." He seemed quite pleased with himself as he said. In front of my in-laws, I expressed to the lawyer that I wanted a divorce and that I intended to claim alimony. I struggled to keep up with the sudden turns of events, but expressing my intentions gave me a sense of determination. The thought that I was being treated like a cash cow, belittled by my husband and his mistress, made my blood boil. Even his own parents were furious at his behavior. That night, I received a phone call from home. "Where are you? I dropped my cell phone in water and couldn't contact you. Sorry." The moment I heard John's voice, my anger peaked. "I've moved out. It's up to you to decide whether you want to stay or move out. I'll collect the rest of my belongings by the end of the week." Upon hearing this, John started panicking. "What? What are you talking about? What's happening?" At his words, I felt nothing but anger. "You've been cheating on me, and now you're asking me what's happening?" John, seemingly confused, started spouting nonsense. "Cheat? Me? Why? How?" He seemed eager to ask how I found out. That was when my mother-in-law took the phone from me. "Come home immediately!" "Huh? Mom? What?" Ignoring my confused husband, I hung up the phone. Less than an hour later, John arrived at his parents' house. "Rachel, what's going on? Why are you here?" I sighed at John, who rushed in after hastily opening the door. "How did it feel to serve homemade meals to your mistress in a hotel with a kitchen?" Upon hearing this, John went pale. "How did you have the nerve to say that you were going to celebrate your parents' 40th anniversary with a homemade meal? You had the audacity to go on trips with your lover while your mother was in the hospital. Huh? What happened to Mom?" Then, at that moment, John's father came out and started yelling. "Your mother was taken away in an ambulance. I called you several times. You're not welcome in this house after today. Once we're done talking, don't ever show your face here again. Also, I want you to return the car you drove here. It's still in my name." John's father snatched the car keys from him. Because John commutes by car, I knew how inconvenient it would be for him to have this option taken away. Inwardly, I felt a bitter sense of satisfaction. Later, my mother-in-law came out and shouted, "We know everything about your shameful affair. Your father and I are on Rachel's side, not yours." Our lawyer had already left, so I directly expressed my intention to get a divorce. John panicked with a pale face. "Divorce? We can't. Why? I always help with household chores. I even cook." At my husband's desperate reaction, all I was able to do was sigh. "Helping out with household chores? You mean taking out the trash or putting away laundry? You don't even know how to use the washing machine. Have you ever cleaned the bathroom or the toilet?" "But I cook." His words made me snap. "You claim to be cooking, but cooking is complete when you clean up afterwards. You buy fancy ingredients, cook, and then act all smug saying, 'Isn't it delicious?' Well, of course it's delicious. Shouldn't you be considering the food expenses when cooking?" John retorted, obviously irritated. "Huh? My dishes taste way better than yours. Cleaning up is easy. It's the cooking that's hard. Just yesterday, my girl told me everything was delicious." He was obviously referring to his mistress. Well, of course, in a hotel kitchen, you don't have to worry about cleaning up. She got to enjoy the expensive food you bought with your money, so of course she thought it was delicious. John, who didn't like my tone, yelled back, "Fine then, let's get a divorce or whatever. I'm done with you." He stormed out of the house. With his car keys taken away by my father-in-law, he reluctantly started walking. He looked pathetic from the back. The following day, I closed the bank account from which our living expenses were being withdrawn from. I wasn't going to pay for rent or any of the utility bills with my money anymore. I sent the divorce papers to John and made sure to include a substantial claim for property division and compensation for emotional distress. John, perhaps out of rage, agreed to the divorce and even the financial terms. He made a single payment to cover the expenses, but it appears that his savings fell short and he had to take out a loan from a consumer loan company. When I went to pick up my belongings later, I saw some unfamiliar items in the house. Perhaps the mistress had moved in. But that wasn't my problem anymore. Of course, I demanded compensation from the mistress through my lawyer as well. A month later, I received a phone call from my ex-husband. "I'm receiving bills for rent and electricity." He'd just realized it now. Well, that's to be expected since the bills weren't being automatically withdrawn anymore. "Of course you receive them. I've closed the bank account we were using for withdrawals." My ex-husband was speechless. "Why should I be responsible for paying rent for a place I don't even live in? Your standard of living will have to drop a bit, but you guys will figure it out. Although I doubt you can afford to keep living there on your salary." With that, I hung up the phone. He makes about half of what I make. If he pays the rent, he'll hardly have any money left for living expenses. The truth is, I had been covering a significant portion of our living expenses. My ex-husband later asked to reconcile, but of course I ignored him. According to John's parents, he became uncomfortable at his job and quit. He showed up at their place, but his father turned him away. I had already moved out of his parents' house and rented an apartment. I don't communicate with my ex-husband anymore, but I occasionally get in touch with his parents, and we still have a good relationship. Seeing them walking hand in hand to this day, I made up my mind to find someone with whom I could eventually have such a relationship.
My name is Emily. I'm 30 and currently pregnant. When I was 23, I was diagnosed with a condition that might prevent me from ever having children. For my younger self, that diagnosis was a heavy burden to bear. I feared that any potential romantic partners would reject me if they knew I might not be able to have children, so I stayed away from relationships. But then last year, I reconnected with Logan at our high school reunion. Logan confessed that he'd had feelings for me since high school and asked to exchange contact information at the reunion. Logan expressed his affection for me with such persistence and strength that I found myself growing attracted to him too. I had been honest with Logan about my potential inability to have children, but Logan said he still wanted to marry me, and so we tied the knot last year. Then, like a miracle, I found out that I was pregnant with Logan's child. I was so thrilled that I showed Logan the ultrasound picture I received from the obstetrician that very day. Logan cried with joy at the news of my pregnancy, and seeing his tears made me cry too. I resolved to cherish and protect the life growing inside me. I decided to bring this child in the world and raise it with all my love. A few days later, I found myself heading back to my parents' house alone. Logan couldn't come because of work, but I wanted to tell my mom about the pregnancy as soon as possible. My mother had comforted me when I was diagnosed with potential infertility, assuring me that a life without children could also be wonderful. She was also the first to celebrate when Logan and I decided to get married. My father passed away when I was very young, and my mom single-handedly raised my brother and me. My father had a good salary and left a sizable inheritance, but my mom continued to work until her retirement. My mom now lives alone in a house, leading an elegant life. She goes to the hobby club every day, tends to her garden, and even makes trendy do-it-yourself shelves, truly savoring her life. I was sure Mom would be overjoyed at the news of my pregnancy. As I arrived at my parents' house with high hopes, Mom greeted me with a smile. "Welcome home, Emily! Ryan and his family are here today." I knew from the voices of my nieces that my brother's family was visiting. Though I'm not particularly fond of my sister-in-law, my eagerness to share my pregnancy news with Mom had me entering the house nonetheless. From my perspective, my brother's wife, Chloe, can be a bit nasty. Chloe, who married my brother Ryan 7 years ago, made a remark I still can't forget when I was feeling down about being diagnosed with potential infertility. "If you can't have children, maybe you should give up on getting married," she said seriously. When I announced my marriage to Logan, she made things even more uncomfortable by saying things like, "How much did you get from your mother-in-law as a wedding gift? What's the point of getting married if you can't even have children?" It was a bitter experience, but creating a rift with Chloe, who is my brother's wife, would do no good. I had always brushed off Chloe's comments with a wry smile and never told Mum about them. As I entered the house with Mum, my nieces were happily playing pretend, while Ryan and Chloe were sitting at the table drinking coffee. After greeting my brother and his wife, I took a seat at the table and Mum poured me a cup of coffee as well. I was hesitant about sharing my pregnancy news with Chloe, but I thought she might not say anything unpleasant if I announced it in front of Mum, so I gathered my courage and began to speak. "I actually came here today because I have some news to share. I am pregnant." As I gently rubbed my stomach and announced the news, Mum exclaimed, "Really?" Chloe muttered a quiet, "You got to be kidding," and my brother shouted, "Congratulations!" "I know you were worried about potentially being unable to get pregnant, Emily. I am so glad for you. Logan really is your destiny. Congratulations." Mom just have been incredibly happy as she began to shed tears of joy. Remembering how Mom had supported me when I was feeling down, I too started tearing up. But I noticed Chloe whispering something to Ryan, and that got my attention. Repeatedly thanking Mom as I gently rubbed her back. Mom finally seemed to calm down and told me with a warm smile, "You must take care of yourself." Just then, the doorbell rang, as if on cue. "Oh, I wonder if that's a package delivery. I'll be right back." As soon as Mom was out of the room, heading towards the entrance, Chloe leaned in and started speaking to me. "Is it true that you're pregnant? You said you might be not able to get pregnant. Was that a lie to gain sympathy from our mother-in-law?" "Huh?" Caught off guard by her unexpected accusation, I could only stare at her in surprise, while my brother feigned ignorance. Seeing no help coming, I firmly responded, "No, that's not true. It's true that the doctors told me I might not be able to get pregnant. Even the doctors were surprised that I could, and my husband was overjoyed," I explained. "You should consider terminating the pregnancy." "What?" "It's better to do it sooner. I heard it's less stressful on the body." The horrifying words coming from Chloe made me shudder. Instinctively, I hugged myself as if to protect my unborn child. How could anyone say such a thing to someone who's excited about their pregnancy? I couldn't believe we were the same species. Even my brother seemed shocked by her statement. "Hey, that's a bit harsh, isn't it?" he defended me. But Chloe glared at him and continued. "But if Emily has a baby, our mother-in-law will definitely spend her money on that child. It's obvious that she would love her own daughter's child more. I can't stand the thought of our children getting less money." "So, you are telling me to abort my child because of money?" "I didn't say abort. I suggested that it might be better. Who knows if a child carried by a mother who might not even be able to get pregnant can be born healthy? I'm just thinking about what's best for your baby too, Emily." I was certain her claim of considering my child's well-being was a complete lie. Chloe was pushing me to abort my child out of fear that she would receive less financial support from our mother-in-law. She was always dressed in designer clothes, and her 2 daughters were the same high-end fashion. Moreover, she and my brother lived in a large house and drove an expensive foreign car. I knew my brother worked at a sizable company and earned a good salary, but I couldn't imagine it would be enough for such luxuries. Though it was hard to believe, I deduced from our conversation that my brother and his wife were receiving a significant amount of money from our mother-in-law. I have no intention of receiving financial support from Mom. Please stop suggesting that I should terminate. The baby can hear you. Chloe snorted at my words. There's no way the baby can hear, she retorted, with a mean expression on her face. To me, she looked like a devil. When my mom returned, my brother and his wife suddenly became restless. It quickly became clear that they were afraid I would tell my mother about their behavior. Since it's almost lunchtime, should we order takeout? Ah, that sounds great. Let's have pizza. Pizza sounds nice. I think I'll head home. I'm feeling a bit tired. I was frustrated with my brother and his wife for planning to splurge on lunch. But more than that, I was feeling suffocated sharing the same space with Chloe. As I stood up and explained my mom that I didn't want to impose, she looked concerned and asked, "Are you sure you're okay?" I just smiled and nodded before leaving. That night, when Logan came home, I told him about what had happened, my mood still low. Logan was furious with Chloe. "I'm going to call her and give her a piece of my mind right now," he fumed. But I stopped him. If we, who were relatives after all, started a fight with Chloe, it would cause unnecessary trouble for my mom. However, I couldn't stand seeing my mom being treated like a cash cow by Chloe. I decided to report today's events to her. A few days later, once I confirmed that my brother and his wife weren't visiting, I went to my mom's home and explained the situation. She smiled warmly. "I've known that Ryan and Chloe have been depending on my money," she said. "Just the other day, Chloe said she needed an outfit for a ballet recital. I thought it was for my granddaughter, but I was shocked when I ended up buying clothes for Chloe. But don't worry, I have no intention of forgiving a daughter-in-law who says such things to my sweet daughter, and a son who doesn't stop her." Our always gentle mom was quietly furious. A few days later, my mom summoned both us and my brother's family to her home. Dressed in brand-name clothes as usual, Chloe arrived with my brother. After giving us, casually dressed as always, a thorough once-over, Chloe dramatically tilted her head. "Even if it's just your family home, is that outfit okay? If you need clothes, I can give you some of our hand-me-downs." "We like our clothes. We're not into flashy clothes like you, Chloe." When Logan gave her a straight answer, Chloe huffled, "I see," and sat down grumpily. I knew Logan was angry when my mom called us, saying, "Emily doesn't need to talk to Chloe anymore." He probably wanted to protect me from Chloe. Just as I was feeling grateful for having married such a dependable husband, my mom entered the room with a man. He was the accountant who had helped my father when he was the president of his company. It was revealed that he was here to talk about my mom's plans for old age and inheritance. "I'm the eldest son, and in return for taking care of our mother in her old age, I'll receive all the inheritance. That's only fair. I'll take good care of our mother-in-law. If a demon like you were to take care of me, I'd die early. I'm preparing to move into a home for the elderly, so don't worry." With that, she handed out pamphlets for the nursing home to both us and my brother's family. We were surprised to learn that my mom was planning to move into a nursing home, but what shocked us even more were her words to Chloe. Chloe seemed stunned too. She froze for the moment, then murmured in a trembling voice, That's harsh. It hurts to hear you say that when I care so much for you, and I was hurt too, to hear Chloe tell my precious daughter to abort her baby. Why would you? But Chloe glared at me. I glared back. I reported everything to Mom. "You tattled on me?" Chloe's voice rose in anger, and Logan just shrugged his shoulders. Well, maybe you shouldn't have said something that would cause trouble if it were reported, Logan countered. It's only natural for Emily to tell our mother-in-law if you said something like that. Ignoring Chloe, who was gritting her teeth in frustration, my mom said, "Now, let's get back to the matter at hand. As for the distribution of my inheritance, I've decided that all my assets will go to Emily after my death." "What? Why, Mom? I'm your eldest son." "According to our tax consultant, all of the gifts you received from me during my lifetime should count." My older brother and Chloe, bewildered, could only stare blankly as the tax consultant took out several documents from a file. One by one, my mum laid them out on the table. "The cost of your wedding, your honeymoon, down payment on your house and car. I lent you the money for all of this with the understanding that you would pay me back, but I haven't received a cent in return." The documents laid out on the table were all loan agreements. Each one detailed how much was borrowed from Mom and what for. At the end of each document were the clear signatures of my older brother and Chloe. I've decided not to request repayment for these loans. Instead, I will count them as gifts made during my lifetime. This way, by leaving the remainder of my estate to Emily, I'm making sure everything is equal. "You're joking." Next to him, Chloe went after Mom. "But Mom, you're going to be spending money on Emily's child from now on, aren't you? Your own daughter's child has to be more precious to you. Isn't that also a gift made during your lifetime?" "She wants me to use my money solely to enjoy the rest of my life. Therefore, from now on, I will only be giving gifts to my grandchild on special occasions." Chloe seemed far from satisfied, but as the tax consultant calmly explained the property distribution, she seemed to have run out of objections. My older brother, realizing he would not be receiving an inheritance, looked deeply disappointed. The mood in the room was tense and somber. However, I felt a strong sense of relief knowing that Mom wouldn't be treated like a cash machine any longer. After this discussion, my older brother and Chloe stopped visiting our mother's house. So they really did only see me as a wallet, huh? But after my child was born, I started visiting home more often. Whenever she was able to play with her grandchild, she seemed truly happy. Even without the money, just seeing Mom shower my child with love was more than enough for me. I later heard from Mom that Chloe used to mock us for both having jobs. Chloe, who had been a stay-at-home wife, apparently used to make comments like, "Emily and her husband are just poor, so they have to work." But now, she works much longer hours than me, to pay for the house and car loans and for her kids' extracurricular activities. Living a lifestyle beyond her means, counting on Mom's wallet, she now has no choice but to work as she can't bring herself to lower her standard of living. Ever since she started working, she's been increasingly irritable. Mom says that my brother has been calling more frequently to vent about Chloe. Struggling to balance housework, child-rearing, and work, their home is always in a mess, and there seems to be no end to their problems. I've heard that my brother is even considering divorce. Right now, my husband and I are pouring our love into our child that came us like a miracle. Of course, we don't receive any support from Mom, so we are working on hard to save for our child's future education. Despite the busy days, just seeing our child smile makes us feel, let's do our best again tomorrow. I can only hope that my brother and Chloe will adopt to a lifestyle within their means and be able to sustain their marriage.
My husband constantly invites friends over every week and pushes me around even though I'm pregnant. His friends also act as if this is the norm. One day, my husband Nick handed me a sleeping bag and said, "You can sleep here." And I was ousted to the kitchen. I can't take it anymore. If you want to have a good time with your friends, I have my own ideas too. By the time they realize who's arrived, they'll be in for a shock. My name is Emma. My husband Nick is a former colleague from my company. We met at a toy company aimed at young children. He was always surrounded by friends, a sociable person with a wide circle of acquaintances. Being introverted, I admired Nick's sociability. So when he asked me out, I was pleasantly surprised despite not expecting it. Once I started dating Nick, I realized that despite seeming flamboyant, he was actually frugal and responsible. Surprisingly, we spent many of our dates at home relaxing. "Nick, you're always hanging out with various people, aren't you? I thought you'd prefer to go out more for dates." When I mentioned this, he responded with slight awkwardness. "So you saw me like that? Actually, I don't really like to waste money. I usually just go along with eating out or drinking with others, but I really prefer relaxing at home." "I see. I myself prefer staying home, watching movies or cooking together, rather than going out." I was happy to see this unexpected side of him, a side he only showed to me. Gradually, I began to see him as a potential husband. He seemed to feel the same way, and a year into our relationship, Nick proposed to me. Even after getting married, Nick remained popular, often being invited to social gatherings by his colleagues. However, I was growing wary of him going out drinking every week. "Hey, I'd like to spend some weekends with you too." As I expressed my feelings, he responded while scratching his head. "Yeah, you're right. My bad. From now on, I'll just drink at home. That way, you won't be lonely, right? I want you to get along with my friends too." That's not exactly what I meant. Still, I couldn't say no to Nick. Since then, his friends and colleagues began to visit our home every weekend to drink. "Hey, Nick's wife, more beer, please." "Emma, we're out of snacks." Among his friends, there was a female contract worker named Sandy who didn't show any signs of helping out. I was run ragged by preparing drinks and snacks, never resting even over the weekend. Nick was completely oblivious to my state. "Guys, don't worry about catching the last train home tonight. Let's party till dawn." "Oh, that's what we were waiting for. You're the best, Nick." Not worrying about the last train? Could it be? As I thought, they partied late into the night and ended up staying over. And when they woke up late in the morning, they would demand as if it was a given. "Got anything to eat? Something easy on a hangover would be good," he said. So my weekend ended without any rest. But if I complained about the situation, Nick would surely just go out to drink. When I was wondering what to do, I found out I was pregnant. When I announced my pregnancy, Nick was overjoyed. "Really? That's great. So, I'm finally going to be a dad. That's right. I have to report this to everyone right away." Without giving me a chance to stop him, Nick messaged them. "Emma, everyone is happy for us and they want to celebrate. They're coming over this weekend." True to his words, his friends flocked to our house over the weekend and started partying harder than ever. They're here to celebrate, so I guess it can't be helped. Initially, I thought so and accepted it, but I was completely tired of them who kept showing up week after week. "Hey Nick, I'm happy they want to celebrate, but I'm having morning sickness and it's hard, so I want you to stop inviting people over." When I complained to Nick, he responded with dissatisfaction. "What are you talking about? Wasn't it you, Emma, who said, 'I'm lonely, I want to drink at home'?" "I told you not to go out drinking. I never said I wanted you to drink at home." "But I can't just leave you alone at home and go out drinking while you're pregnant. What if something happens while I'm gone?" Could it be that he's worried about me and drinking at home for my sake? When I thought about that, I found it hard to be too forceful. But every week is a bit too much. All right. But right now, everyone is just trying to celebrate our baby. We can't just ignore their feelings, right? Having been told that, I had no choice but to concede. I understand, but I'm having morning sickness, so I don't think I can prepare much food or snacks. I don't want to carry heavy stuff either, so will you handle the drinks, Nick? Of course. Just do what you can, Emma. Relieved by his words, I got through another weekend. Today again, their friends came to their house like they're used to. Hey ma'am, I brought beer. I'll put it here. Please keep it cool. Okay. And also, these are ingredients for food. You don't have to cook anything fancy. It seemed Nick had told them something as the friends started bringing drinks and food one after another. But they only brought things. The actual task of fetching drinks from the refrigerator or making snacks was still left to me. Hey, Nick's wife, can you bring us the beer from the fridge? Emma, we need more snacks, please. In the end, I had to do the cooking. I knew that talking to Nick would be pointless. So I gently told them, actually, I've been having really bad morning sickness lately, and that's why I've taken a leave of absence from work, so... I was about to say that I wanted them to refrain from coming to our house in the future. But, laughing, the friends responded to my words. Exactly! I heard about it at work. Emma, you're on leave, right? Then you have to work for Nick at least on weekends. Right. Pregnancy isn't a sickness, so it's better if you move around a bit. Misunderstanding something, my feelings didn't get through at all, and the friends started to take advantage of me even more. I had thought they wouldn't stay the night, but deep into the night, Nick and his colleagues didn't slow down their drinking. As I expected, they continued to drink past the subway time, got completely drunk, and were no longer in a state to return home. I was too tired to get angry anymore. When I tried to talk to Nick and then retired to the bedroom, Sandy, a contract employee, was already sleeping in our bed. I urgently appealed to him. Nick, Sandy's sleeping in our bed. Oh, she got pretty wasted, so I carried her to the bed. I can't believe it. I want to rest too. Yeah, that makes sense. Just wait a bit. I thought he was going to wake Sandy up and get her off the bed, but instead, Nick came back with a sleeping bag. You should sleep here for tonight. Saying that, Nick started setting up the sleeping bag in the corner of the kitchen. Whoa, wait a second. You're telling me I'm sleeping here? And in a sleeping bag? Well, we're still drinking in the living room, so this is the only place, right? I'm glad I bought this camping sleeping bag, haha. Called by his friends, Nick returned to the living room with more drinks in his hands. With no choice, I spent the night in an uncomfortable sleeping bag. The next morning, I was awakened by a knock from Sandy. Hey, Emma, how long are you going to sleep? It's already 11 a.m., you know. Sorry, I had trouble falling asleep last night. After a night in an unfamiliar sleeping bag and on the hard kitchen floor, I managed to fall asleep only when dawn broke. I only managed to doze off, and I'm not feeling refreshed at all. Regardless, Sandy continued. Hey, I'm hungry. Don't we have anything for breakfast? Oh, thanks to someone's oversleeping, it's more like brunch now, haha. Wake me up when it's ready, okay? She said, and then went back to our bedroom. With a fuzzy head, I went to the living room where Nick and his friends were passed out drunk. The table was littered with the remnants of their food and drinks. It seems I'm the one who will have to clean up this mess. As I was making a soup grudgingly, the smell attracted Nick and his friends. Oh, soup, huh? Nice. Sandy also came to the living room and started stuffing herself with rice, soup, and omelet. His friends, too, seemed to have become quite cheerful. Yesterday was so fun, man. I don't feel like going home today either. I get that. It's a long weekend after all. Let's have a second celebration. Instead of refusing, Nick said, Thanks for doing this for us. He even expressed his gratitude. It looks like it's up to me to be the one to say no. Well, everyone, I've understood your feelings well enough, so it's not necessary for you to celebrate so many times. The room fell silent for a moment at my stern words. Sensing this, Nick quickly addressed everyone.
That's right, let's invite others today. They said they were busy and couldn't come yesterday, right?
At his words, the friends quickly got their spirits back.
Nick, that's a brilliant idea.
They were also wanting to celebrate again. Noticing my dissatisfaction, Nick addressed me sternly.
Emma, what's with that attitude since a while ago? It's rude to everyone, isn't it? I thought you'd be anxious being alone as a pregnant woman, so I'm holding back from going out drinking. They're all caring for me who can't go out drinking, and have taken the trouble to come to our house, you know?
The friends also agreed with Nick's opinion. Holding back from drinking for the sake of his wife, Nick really cares about his wife, but it will suffocate if you keep holding back too much. We have to take a breather like this about once a week. We're always ready to accompany you. That's right. There are not many good husbands like Nick. We'll come every week if necessary.
Thanks for covering for my wife's selfishness, everyone.
Encouraged by everyone, Nick didn't seem entirely displeased. Everyone's covering for my selfishness? Is this kind of drinking party going to continue every week from now on? That's ridiculous. Finally, I snapped at Nick's words. Got it. Then can I invite someone too? As I said that, Nick nodded in relief.
Yeah, you can invite whoever you want. It's more fun when there are many people.
Hearing that, I immediately made a phone call to a certain place. In the afternoon, another friend of Nick's arrived.
I didn't think everyone was drinking 2 days in a row. Thanks for the invite, Nick. Likewise, thank you for celebrating for us. Let's drink to our heart's content today.
Then the doorbell rang again.
Oh, looks like the person Emma invited is here too. Should I get the door?
Opening the front door, Nick was taken aback.
But boss, why are you here?
I hurriedly headed to the entrance to welcome the visitor. Uncle, I've been waiting for you.
Uncle?
Indeed, the man I called to our home on the phone was the head of our department at the company. To the surprised Nick and his friends, I explained the situation. This man is an old friend of my father. He has loved me as his own daughter since the day I was born.
But Emma, you never mentioned this before.
Nick interjected, sweating nervously.
He didn't show any signs of this at the wedding or at the company, even as head of the department.
Well, if the other employees heard that the boss was doting on me, they would find it hard to work, wouldn't they? At my words, the boss added,
I have also been sternly told by Emma not to be overly familiar in public. I've never been able to outsmart her. As a man without children of my own, Emma is like a precious daughter to me.
The boss, suddenly serious, turned to Nick and said this.
This precious Emma has come to me for help when she's in trouble. That's why I came here. What seems to be the issue? What? We haven't done anything to trouble Emma, right guys?
As Nick said this, everyone else hastily nodded in agreement. Immediately I addressed them. Right, making a pregnant woman like me prepare late-night snacks and breakfast, making me sleep in a sleeping bag. You don't think anything of it, do you, Nick? Upon hearing my words, the boss was furious.
Nick, are you treating Emma this way? It's just that everyone said they wanted to celebrate our pregnancy, so I couldn't refuse.
Suddenly being blamed, the friends hastily started to explain.
No, sir. We only accepted Nick's request because he said he couldn't go out drinking due to his wife.
Then the boss put an end to the disgraceful attempt to evade responsibility.
Shut up! It's outrageous to have a drinking party overnight in a house with a pregnant woman and let her sleep in the kitchen. Do you think that's appropriate for our company, a toy manufacturer targeting young children? We're very sorry. We'll excuse ourselves now.
The friends, startled by the boss's anger, quickly gathered their things and hurried to leave. Seeing their reactions, the boss shouted again.
Hey, are you going to make Emma clean up? Clean up the mess you've made for yourselves before you leave.
Being glared at by the boss, they started cleaning up the cluttered living room and doing the dishes. When the house was all tidied up, they left as if they were fleeing. Amidst all that, the boss called a halt to Sandy.
Sandy, I want you to stay behind for a bit.
Me? After her friends left, the boss questioned a visibly uncomfortable Nick and Sandy.
Do you know why I asked Sandy to stay?
Nick, though flustered, denied it.
No, what are you talking about? It's about the rumors between you, Nick, and Sandy. There's been talk within the company that you two have been having an affair. That's a misunderstanding.
With Nick desperately denying it, the boss lowered his tone.
I had heard about Emma being pregnant and thought the rumors were baseless. I wanted that shouldn't be the case, but you disappointed me.
The boss showed an email image sent by someone from the company. It contained images of Nick and Sandy entering a fancy restaurant and coming out of a brand store carrying shopping bags. It turns out Nick was not thrifty, he was just stingy with me. In fact, I had suspicions about his relationship with Sandy and mentioned my concerns to the boss. Upon hearing this, the boss immediately contacted several employees who had witnessed the two and provided photographs as evidence.
No, boss, this is,
Exactly, there's nothing between Nick and me. Even when confronted with evidence, their pathetic excuses disgusted me. I hesitated at the thought of our baby growing up without a father, but if the father is someone who can casually invite his affair partner into our home, it's better if he isn't around. I told Nick on the spot that I wanted a divorce. I've had enough of your selfish excuses. Nick and I are getting a divorce. You two can do whatever you want.
What about our baby in your belly?
You who let our child sleep in a sleeping bag on the kitchen floor, worried about our child? What are you saying now?
But...
There's no but. You who cheated don't get a say. My conditions are asset division and child support.
How much is it going to be?
Who knows? You've done enough to deserve it, haven't you?
Emma, reconsider.
Shut up. I'm done being patient. Go have your parties with your friends for the rest of your life, you man-child. After that, the house became mine through property division. I made him agree to pay child support as well. The boss was present for all the discussions, so Nick reluctantly agreed to my terms. After the divorce, Nick left the house and moved in with Sandy. Rumors of them living together quickly spread within the company, and their affair became public knowledge. Because their bad reputation also negatively affected the clients, it seems Sandy was fired and Nick was demoted. As the reason for the contract termination reached the temp agency, Sandy was unable to find a new placement. Nick also suffered a major salary cut due to his demotion. Sandy, now jobless, and Nick, who stretched thin by monthly child support payments, they have no wiggle room in their lives and are now forced to live a very frugal life. They are always fighting about money, and though they both want to break up, they are forced to stick together because neither of them has the funds to live alone. On the other hand, with the support of my family and the boss, I was able to give birth safely. Afterwards, the boss introduced me to a man, leading to a remarriage. As I created a new family, I've never been happier.